What truly is the difference between store-bought bread and bread that you make from 100% freshly milled wheat that you have milled at home? I get questions of, why can't I just buy really good bread from the store? Or maybe, what is whole grain anyway? What does whole wheat and whole grain actually mean? Well, we're going to be diving deep into that today to actually really examine the difference between any kind of store-bought bread and the bread that you make yourself at home from freshly milled wheat. And what we actually discover may surprise you just a little bit. Hey y'all, welcome back to Grains and Grit. My name is Felicia, and on this channel I teach you all about real whole grains, all from a biblical perspective. I teach you how and why to be milling your own wheat and grains at home, baking that delicious bread, myth busting when it comes to wheat and grains, and more. Okay, so we're going to dive in deep to this today. I haven't actually really addressed this. We're really going to dive deep to see what the true difference is between three types of store-bought bread that you can find at the grocery stores, whether that is Walmart or Whole Foods, and what's the difference between that and making bread yourself at home with 100% freshly milled wheat that you have milled yourself. What is the importance of that? What is the big deal? Why do I even exist? Teaching about this. All the things. Okay, so in this video, we're going to break down three types of bread that you find at the store. The first is going to be your typical white bread, Wonder Bread type stuff that you find at the store. The second is ones that are labeled whole wheat or whole grain bread. We're going to be examining those. And then the third is actually a very small category that you can find at grocery stores, and that is the ones that actually look pretty good. The ones that seem to be made with organic, whole grain, and real ingredient breads. This is a very small category, but we're going to look at those as well. Okay, so first up is our typical white bread. For this example, we're going to be using probably the most well-known white bread, and that is Wonder Bread. Now, of course, you have Wonder Bread and then all the off-brands and all that stuff, but this is just your stereotypical white bread. And what this means by white bread is that white flour is used, meaning the bran and the germ have been removed, thus leaving only the endosperm, which is mainly just protein and starch. And so you're dealing with a white flour. Most of these white breads also enrich the flour, so they're taking that white flour and adding in a few of the vitamins back in, predominantly just some of the B vitamins and iron. And these breads may contain bleached flour. They may not. They usually will state that in the label if it's using unbleached white flour. But if it's bleached, that's a whole other host of issues there. All right, so let's actually look at the ingredients list for Wonder Bread. Here we go. We have it up here, and let's see what we actually see. And I'm probably going to butcher a lot of the pronunciation that you see here. Unbleached enriched flour, which contains wheat flour, malted barley flour, niacin, reduced iron, thiamine, mononitrate, riboflavin, folic acid. This is what makes enriched flour. These are synthetic vitamins put back in. We also have water, sugar, yeast, contains 2% or less of each of the following: calcium carbonate, wheat, gluten, soybean oil, salt, dough conditioners, contains one or more of the following: sodium sterol lactate, calcium sterol lactylate, monoglycerides, mono and diglycerides, distilled monoglycerides, calcium peroxide, calcium iodide, datum, ethoxylated mono and diglycerides, enzymes, ascorbic acid, vinegar, monocalcium phosphate, citric acid, cholecalciferol, which is vitamin D, soy lecithin, calcium propionate to retard spoilage. Whew. Okay, so I just feel like I just read through like Old Testament names from the scripture. All right, so what do we see in these ingredients? First of all, like I stated, this is white flour. This is not whole grain. This is not whole wheat. And I think pretty much everyone kind of knows these days, white flour, definitely not the best for you. White flour will spike your blood sugar, all of those things. But also what we see in this ingredient list is we see GMO ingredients. That is seen through soybean, soy lecithin, those type of things. We also see a host of preservatives that I can't even pronounce, and I probably really butchered a lot of the pronunciation for that. So the food scientists out there, I'm sorry. But bottom line is this just, again, is this really even up for debate? Do people still actually debate that white flour is good for you? I don't think so. But these are the bottom line things: is it's enriched flour, it's a synthetic vitamin. So those of you who definitely have that MTHFR gene mutation and cannot handle folic acid, this is definitely a bread you want to avoid. Any sort of enriched flour with that folic acid. But also another thing we have to consider is, where is the wheat from? Was the wheat that was provided for this sprayed with glyphosate or other really bad chemicals that we do not want in our food? That's another component. We have no idea who the farmer is, where the wheat came from, probably a variety of people. So that's definitely something to consider. Now, as far as the nutritional facts, let's look at the nutritional label. So for one slice of Wonder Bread, it contains 1.5 grams of fiber, 2.5 grams of added sugars, and 2.5 grams of protein. So not that great as far as the nutritional value of those three big dogs there. Obviously, the preservatives are made to make it last. So again, I think, this is the easiest to argue. The biggest difference between the white bread from the store and, of course, what you make at home is, what you do at home is you mill the wheat yourself. That's containing 40 out of 44 essential nutrients, the fiber, the protein, all of those things. Plus, you're using ingredients that you can pronounce, and they're very simple, no preservatives. And you can actually know who your farmer is to see, was your wheat sprayed with glyphosate? Is it organic? Is it, you can know your farmer so much better. So that was a white bread. Again, I don't even think this is up for debate. But the next two actually may be up for a little bit of debate about the goodness of it, and comparing that to freshly milled wheat at home. So the second one up is breads that are labeled whole grain or whole wheat bread. So you already know, we need to avoid the white flour, but let's check out the whole wheat or whole grain bread from the store. And the example that we're going to use today is Pepperidge Farms whole grain 100% whole wheat bread. Now, the origin of Pepperidge Farms is absolutely fascinating, but I have to say, I don't know if Margaret Rudkin would approve of the bread being sold today by Pepperidge Farm. We will see. So let's actually take a look at the ingredients, because so far this bread sounds good. Oh, whole grain, whole wheat, sounds like a good bread. Let's see what it actually is. We have whole wheat flour, water, sugar, cracked wheat, yeast, wheat gluten, whey, contains 2% or less of vegetable oil, soybean, and or canola, sugarcane fiber, salt, calcium, propionate, and sorbic acid to extend freshness, datum, monoglycerides, natural flavor, and soy lecithin. So already we're definitely better than the white flour. That was a lot less ingredients, a lot more Old Testament name type reading stuff. I was able to pronounce those a lot better. And it already is better where it doesn't contain enriched flour. It just states whole wheat flour and even cracked whole grains. So that's how they have the whole grain label, is to include that. So this is already good whole wheat. In order to be labeled these days, does have to contain the bran and the germ, and it's pretty much natural ratios. So this is a whole wheat type flour. So it's probably going to have more of the fiber in it, more of the B vitamins, those type of nutrients. However, we have no idea how much, say, for example, cracked grain is actually in here. There's really no regulation of how much of a cracked grain or whole grain needs to be in bread for it to be listed as whole grain. And in fact, that manufacturers here in the United States actually are required to label their foods based on like the most ingredient first. So what's listed first is usually the most in the recipe, and then trickles on down to the least amount that is in this recipe or whatever product it is. And so if you notice that the cracked whole grain is actually after sugar, whole wheat is of course the first ingredient. That means this is predominantly whole wheat flour, which duh, I would think so. But that cracked grain actually comes after a few of those ingredients, after the sugar, in fact. So that tells me there's probably not much of the whole grain, cracked grain in this recipe. Now, here are the other problems with these ingredients. First of all, we are still looking at GMO ingredients. That soybean oil, that canola oil, most likely are genetically modified, as well as any soy lecithin that is used as well. Preservatives, I still can't pronounce, that still have that natural flavors. Who knows what that is? And of course, we don't know where the wheat came from. Was glyphosate used on this wheat? This is not organic type bread, so it is very possible that, so there is a possibility that the wheat has been sprayed with glyphosate or any type of bad chemicals that we just don't want on our food. Now, let's look at the nutrition label of this bread. So we are dealing with, for one slice of bread, 4 grams of sugars. 3 of them are additional added sugars, 5 grams of protein, and 3 grams of fiber. So we are doing better with these, with the protein and the fiber, than the white bread, of course, but still kind of not the best. So if you still have problems with typical bread from the store, so you already say I have problems with the white bread, there's quite a huge possibility that you will still have problems with this bread as well. Because contrast to whenever you mill your wheat at home, you have, once again, 40 out of 44 essential nutrients. You have all of that fiber, all the B vitamins, and all the vitamins that are not oxidized from whenever flour is milled. And we'll actually talk about that a bit later. All right, before we get into number 3, if you're already feeling a little bit of despair of how can I possibly learn to mill my own wheat, to make bread at home, this just seems so intimidating, so overwhelming, no problem. Because I've got you covered by today's sponsor, which is actually my course. It is my full training program that I have made for y'all, the full freshly milled flour training program, Home Milling 101, that has recently come out. And I'm so excited about it because it took me years, y'all, before I even figured out a basic yeast loaf of bread, like basic sandwich bread, to replace these breads from the store. It took me years to figure out because I just didn't have the resources available. And that's why I actually created this course for y'all to actually help y'all master in only like 2 weeks time what took me years to do. This is for the newbies. If you don't even know where to start, this is for you. It's also for those who maybe already have your grain mill, you're ready to jump in, but still don't have the confidence or the mastery of using 100% freshly milled grains. This is to give you the confidence and the technique behind it, not just a recipe and, hey, you should be doing this. All you have to do is just go to grainsandgrit.com/home-milling-101. And I just know that this is really going to be a game changer for your life. You're going to want to check it out. All right, so now let's get into the third type of bread that you will see in the store. Now, this is actually very small, and I would say there's only 2 brands that I'm familiar with, and this is ones that actually look pretty good for store-bought bread, and that is Dave's Killer Bread, and then also Ezekiel 4-9 bread. Now, I'm actually not going to touch the Ezekiel 4-9 bread. I've actually done a video in regards to talking all about Ezekiel bread. I'll link that up here for y'all in the description box below. So we're just going to stick with one example in this video, and that is looking at Dave's Killer Bread. Now we are going to be looking at the, he has different varieties, but we're going to be looking at the 21 whole grains and seeds organic bread. So right off the bat, this is already much better off than the rest of the bread that you typically find in the store, in that this is USDA organic certified. And it also has that wonderful stamp from the Non-GMO Project, which means that this bread has been tested by them, by a third party, and they have cleared it saying that there are no genetically modified ingredients in this bread. So right off the bat, it's looking pretty good. It is definitely much better than our rest of our typical options that we find in this store. So now let's actually look at the ingredients of this bread. All right, so what we see here is we see organic whole wheat, which includes organic whole wheat flour, organic cracked whole wheat. We then have water, organic cane sugar, organic 21 whole grains and seeds mix, which includes organic, I'm going to stop saying organic, these are all organic, flax seeds, sunflower seeds, tricolor quinoa, black quinoa, red quinoa, white quinoa, and we see the whole flax seeds, the triticale, the pumpkin seeds, the rolled barley, rolled oats, rolled rye, blue cornmeal millet, rolled spelt, brown rice flour, amaranth flour, yellow cornmeal, organic kamut Corazon wheat, sorghum flour, buckwheat flour, quinoa, poppy seeds. Whew. And then we have organic wheat gluten, organic oat fiber, contains 2% or less of each of the following: yeast, organic molasses, sea salt, organic cultured wheat flour, organic vinegar, organic acerola cherry powder, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, and enzymes. Okay, so that actually sounds pretty good. Pretty much everything is recognizable. No crazy chemicals from what we can see. Oops. I kind of made a mistake, y'all. This is future Felicia. When editing this video, I realized I did not put the nutrition facts in. So once again, for one slice of Dave's Killer Bread with the 21 whole grain seeds, we have, as you can see here, total sugars are 4 grams of added sugars, but we do have 6 grams of protein, and then we have 4 grams of fiber, which I would say is definitely not bad and certainly better than most other breads. So what could I possibly have wrong with this bread? First of all, this is actually something that is slightly hidden And that is the fact that it actually adds extra gluten into this bread. Now, there's nothing necessarily wrong with adding gluten to bread. However, that will disrupt the typical gluten to fiber ratio that God actually put in to wheat in order to help you digest it. So for those of you who think, and again, that's a whole other video of whether gluten is actually causing your problems, but the bottom line is it is an added ingredient that is not necessary whenever you actually mill your bread at home. The reason why they add gluten to bread like this, especially a whole grain bread, is to kind of lighten it up a bit, to make it a little bit fluffier, but you actually don't need it when you mill it yourself at home. And so it's just an additional added ingredient that some people may still have issues with, may not, that just isn't needed whenever you actually bake this bread at home from freshly milled wheat that you've milled yourself. Another thing is, even though I have to say this is definitely better than typical bread in the store, but one thing I don't know is how long was it from whenever the flour was milled to whenever it was baked? Because as soon as you crack open that wheat berry, oxidation starts to occur. And just within 3 days, about 90% of nutrients are lost to oxidation. The main one that goes first is vitamin E. And that wheat germ is the highest amount of vitamin E that you will find in any food anywhere on this planet. It's the best source for vitamin E, which is so crucial to your body to have. And that is one of the first things to go with oxidation. And so there's a high probability that that vitamin E has been lost in this bread. Again, I don't know how long they go from milling the flour to baking the flour to baking it, which locks in those nutrients better. So there's a big question there that I just don't know. But I do know when I actually mill those grains at home, when I milled it and when I baked it. Another thing is preservatives are still added to these type of breads so they can stay on the grocery store shelf. Granted, they look like more natural type preservatives. That's that cherry powder that you see there, and also probably some of the enzymes, which I don't know what enzymes that they used, but you know, those are just things that you don't need to use when you are making this bread at home yourself. It will cause the bread to go bad faster with just in a few days. The bread will have mold on it, but that's how God designed it, and that's kind of how I prefer it. The next thing that I have against Killer's Day bread is the price. Y'all, this is $6 to $7 a loaf. Okay, do you know how many loaves I need in my house a week? That's a lot. Like, we probably consume, I think, I don't know, I don't really keep track, but I think probably generously 4 to 5 loaves of bread a week in my home. I have a large family. That's a lot of money. If I always have to spend $6 to $7 a loaf. I've actually calculated up my loaves of bread recently. I kind of need to do it again, especially since prices keep changing with everything. But I can usually make bread at home that is whole, that is freshly milled, organic type ingredients, that are ones that are simple ingredients that I can understand and pronounce, for only like $1 or $2 a loaf. And that is so much better than $6 to $7 a loaf, like 6-7 times more than what I can do at home. So that's the big thing right there, is people say like, well, I can just buy this. But the bottom line again is, besides the price, is this is not necessarily milled fresh. I don't know, maybe it is, but I doubt it. You have that additional ingredients like the gluten, those preservatives and enzymes that you just don't need whenever you are doing it at home. And that's the biggest difference. So even though this bread by far is some of the best that we have on the market, and I'm not gonna lie, y'all, when I do go on vacation, I do take bread that I've made at home, but if we run out, this is the bread that I buy. So, but it's not what we're consuming on a regular basis, because my bread that I make at home with 100% freshly milled wheat, emphasis on freshly milled wheat at home, and what I bake at home is way easier. Fewer ingredients. You can do this, okay? I know it can be intimidating, but trust me, it is way better. You also are no longer reliant on the store to feed your family the staff of life. I caution y'all for relying on grocery stores for every bit of your food. Definitely make what you can, grow what you can, raise what you can for chickens and beef or whatever it is that you like. And this is one of those areas that just help you become more self-sufficient. Is, yeah, you know, you can buy bread from the store. You can buy bread anywhere in this country, even at a gas station, but it is so much better for your health, for your budget, and for your self-sufficiency to actually be milling your grains at home and baking that bread. And like I said, I show you how to do it all in my training program. It is not just about the recipe that you have, but the techniques behind it as well. So that is it, y'all. The biggest comparison, and hopefully this cleared up some questions that I get from y'all. If you would really like a deep dive into why, once again, you should be milling your wheat at home, why we can be reclaiming this lost art, then be sure to check out this video right here. And as always, I hope that y'all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next week. Bye.